Welcome to the most complete crash course of React Hook. In this course, you're going to learn about all the common hooks which you will use over and over again when you will build your application, when you will build your tab. So in this course, we're going to see the practical example of each one of these hooks we're going to use over and over again, and how we can utilize those hooks in more professional way to render the data into our component, change the instead, and make an API call and make the context management. So hope this entire course will teach you every single thing which you have to know about the React development, TypeScript development, or Next.js development. With that, let's start working straight away into our course. Here I am. Let me open this one and close this one. And so the very first thing I have to do is I have to create my next application. Whether you are creating next application, TypeScript, or React, in all of this framework you will find the same hooks. So we can create a next application because we have to understand the hooks. So type npx create next app and hit enter. We don't want to do anything, click on enter, and it's going to create the folder and file structure for our application. So just wait, and here we have created the folder and file. So simply clear the terminal and come here. We have already have the script, so dev build start lint, and here we have the dev dependency which you don't need to worry about it. Simply close this one. Now what we have to do is open up your terminal and let's start the application to see everything is working fine. So npm run dev and come back to the browser, click on this localhost, and you can see every single thing is working fine. We have no issues in our application. So it looks pretty good. Come back to the code, and now we have to clear our folder and file structure because we don't want to keep unnecessary code. So open up this style, and I want to remove this. I want to remove this file, delete this one. Now we can come back to the pages, and we have to delete this API folder. Then we have to delete this document, and then we have to remove all these codes. So it looks pretty good. Type RFCE and save it. Close this one, and if you come back to the application, you can see everything is looking fine. We have clear environment, and now we can start working on our components straight away. So if I come here we are back in the VS course. Now what I will do is, let me do one thing. Let me create the component. So you can simply download the starter file straight away. In that you will find all of this component which I have created for this tutorial purpose. So we have this use context, we have useEffect, we have useReducer, we have useRef, we have useState. So in that I have given you this pre-built component which I have built, which you don't need to worry about it. So simply get the starter file, and all we're going to do is we're going to simply call those hook and we're going to utilize it. So we have this hooks. Now we have to come back to the CSS file. In that I have also provided you the CSS which you don't need to write. So we can straight away focus on the functionality. So these are the components, these are the CSS file which will be given to all of you guys in the starter file. So simply get that. Now what we can do is, and here we are in the app.js. We haven't done anything. We're going to do it together. Then we have an index. It's pretty good. So now the very first thing I have to do is let's import the component, because all the components we're going to test right up here. So let's import the very first one, and this one is useState, and that's coming from the component useState. Then replicate it, and we have to change. So this will be the use context, and this will be our useEffect, and this one is the useRef, and we're going to have one more which is called useReducer. So these are the 5 hooks we're going to explore, because these are the most common use hook you will find when you will build your application. You're going to make an API call, or you're going to fetch the data, you're going to set a state variable, you're going to make a context management, you're going to use useReducer, you're going to use and interact with the window object. So all of these hooks are really very important, and I want you to just try to understand the logic we are building and the way we are utilizing in our project. Okay, so here we have all of these hooks which we're going to work together. Now what I will do is, the very first hook we're going to start working on is useState. So let's try to understand that how we can use useState hook. So first I will do is I will provide a class. Again, you don't need to worry about it. Simply provide the class because all the CSS is already given to all of you guys. So let me provide this center class. I will simply remove this, and here I'm going to take h1, and I will say master react.js / Next.js, because whether you type Next.js, they all have the same hooks. Course. Okay, looks pretty good. And now I'm going to simply call the component. So if I call this useState, and if I save it, if I come back here, you can see the component is ready. And in that we're going to simply change the data based on the use hook. So let's open this particular component and come here. So now the very first thing we have to do is we have to import the useState. And that's what I can do it very easily. We'll say useState. So we have the state. Now I'm going to build a function. First I will take a useState variable, and I'm going to build a function which allow me to increment the number. because we are changing the state based on the click event, or you can change the state based on the page reload. But here we are focusing on the click event. Okay, generally what happened when you are getting a data from the API, you try to store the data in useState. So let me take a variable. Let me show you what I mean. I'll say useState and it will generate this. I'll change this to count. And the best part of this state variable that you can define any type of data type. So like I can go with a number. You can change this to like null or undefined, or you can take it as a string. I'll say $, or you can take it as a array, or you can take it as an object. So you have all of this data type which you can define, but for a time being, let's go with a number because we have to increment that. So I'll come here, I'll create a function called handle increment, and it's gonna be an arrow function, and all I have to do is I have to simply increment this particular state variable. So I will say +1. So on the click event, the number will keep increasing. So all I have to do is simply come here and I will set a dynamic state here. So I'll say that if count is equal to 0, then I can display this particular text message useState. Otherwise we have to display the actual count. Okay, so right now you can see it's 0. That's why we have this particular test. I hope you guys can understand that how it's working. So because the initial value we have defined for this state is 0, and it's 0, that means we have to display this particular text message. Otherwise we have to display the actual number. And now I'm going to simply call the function. So let me call the function and save it, and that will work for absolutely fine. So if I come back here and if I click on this increment, it will go up. I hope you guys can appreciate that how it's working. We are simply manipulating the entire data based on the click event, because that's the nature of the hook, useState hook. You can easily do that with array, with object, with null, with undefined. You can do that very easily. So that's really powerful. That's how you can use this useState. So if you page reload the page, it will come back to the 0, and you can simply click and you can increase the number. So that's how the useState work. First you have to define, and you have to get that useState from React. Then you can define the variable type. So right now we are going with the number. So this is how you can define. So this particular one is the variable which you can use, and this one you're going to use it for setting up the data. So here we have used that one, set counter, and we are setting up the data to our state variable. Okay, and here we have the function, and that's what we are simply rendering, building the logic and calling the function. So that's the very first hook. I hope you guys have understood that how we have built that and how we have utilized it in our component. If you reload the page and you can simply click, it will increment. It will increment. So that's the very first hook. Now I will simply close this one and let's move to the next hook. So let's comment this one, and next hook we're going to simply call it this useEffect. And this one is quite interesting and the most common use hook you will find when you will work in your application, because sometimes what happens that you have to reload the data based on the user visit, or you have to perform any action based on the like click on the event or change in the data. So that kind of thing you have to do. So here the logic I'm going to follow is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an API call every single time when the user will come to this particular page. So let me show you this. So we have this component. I hope you guys are into the same component, useEffect. Now we have to get this particular hook from React, and that's how we can get it. We'll take this useState and we'll take this useEffect. So these are the hooks we are taking. Now what I will do is I'll simply close this one and come back here. So this time I'm going to make an API call to the particular URL, and from there I will get the name of the user. So for that, what I have done, I have installed this particular library Axios. So make sure you have to install the library, which is very easy. Simply type npm I, or you can install that one. And it's already given in the starter file. So if you are continuing with the starter file, you can simply follow from there. So we have this Axios library, and that's what I'm going to simply import here. So let's import the Axios library. Now what I will do, I'm going to take a state variable, and it's going to be a type of array, because we're going to get the name of the user and we want to store that user name in an array because it will have 10 users. So this is the state variable I have taken. Now here I'm going to use this use hook. Okay, here you have to understand that how I'm building the logic and making the call to the API. We'll make it instant return, and here we have to call the Axios. So we'll say Axios.get method, and here we have to provide the URL on which we're going to make a request and get the data. So we'll say HTTP JSON placeholder type code and user. So this is the URL on which we are making the call, and it will give us the promise. So we have to resolve that promise, and that's what we can do inside a useEffect. Okay, that's the power. We'll get a response. Once we have the response from the API, we have to simply resolve that, and we have to set that in our state variable. So we can say set users. So let's make it this capital, because this is the general convention. Set, and it's a U, capital U. So once I have the response, it will have the data inside the response. So I'll say response.data. In that way, the entire user information is stored in my state variable. Again, okay. So then I have to simply provide this catch block, because if something goes wrong inside a API call, means the API is not responding, so it will throw an error. So we have to catch that error, and that's what we can do it inside a useEffect. So we'll say catch error, and we can simply console log out this. So it will take a callback function and will simply console log out the entire error object. And that's how we can make an API call inside this useEffect. You can simply call any function, you can simply define any data and set into a state variable in this hook. But we are going with the most complex approach. We are calling an API and then we are setting up the data in our state variable. So that's the use hook, and here we have to provide this empty array. Because what we want here, we want to make the API requests when at the time of page reload. So if user coming to this page, this particular index page, only on that time we have to make an API request. Or you can set multiple conditions, like if there is any data get changed in the user, you can make an API calls. You can do that, but let's go with a simple approach. Okay, again, I have covered this extensively in all the project which I have built in my channel. So you can take this NFT, Uniswap, like real estate, you can take this supply chain. So we have close to 20-30 project. Just check and have a look. Okay, so this is the hooks we have here. Looks pretty good. We are making the calls, and first we are importing this useState and useEffect. Then we are making a call, and then we are setting that to the state variable and console log. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply render, because the name, I will get the list of names and I want to render those names into my components, and that's I can do it very easily. I can come here, we'll take a UL, and inside that I will take a li, will say user. In that it is an array. So this user is an array and I have to simply render it. So I'll say map, I'll say this, let's call it user, and I have to simply call instant return. I'll take a li, I'll provide a key. So I'll say user.id, and here I have to simply render the name user.name. So I'm getting some sort of error. I can see that. Okay, simply come here, and here you can see that I'm getting this particular error. I know why it's happening. So let me provide this, remove this one and provide it here. If I save it, if I come back to the browser, you can see I got the name. I got all the 10 names from the API and I'm rendering into my component. So that's the best part, because the moment I reload the page, it's going to fetch and make an API request, and it's going to render the component, the data in the component. So that looks pretty fine. You can simply slice it down, because we have multiple method. You can see that we have 10, but I want to use only 5. So I'll say use this slice. I'll say 0, 5. So only 5 name will display here. Okay. So hope you guys have understood that what we have done. First, we are using this hook and making a call. If I show you the entire response, so let's console.log and the response. In that we'll have all the data. So save it, come back to the inspect element, come here, and here we have the object. Inside the object you will find, this is the configuration. You can able to find all the data we are getting, and here we have the data. So you can see it has an ID, it has the name, and it has bunch of information, the surname and all. You can display all of those things, and that's how you can use this use hook. So it's really powerful. So this will only call when the page will reload. So this one is the second most common hook, use hook you will find in React application or TypeScript or the Next.js. So we are done with these two hooks. Now let me comment this one, and now we're going to start working on the use context, because this one is really powerful when it's come to managing the context of our application, context management. If you're not using Redux toolkit, then definitely you're going to use this use context, and that's what we have used extensively in our other project which we have built on the channel. So again, I'm telling you that after following this course, you have to look at all the project which we have built. That will give you an amazing idea. Okay, so let's call the component, and now you can see here we have the component. The component is displaying. So let's come here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and inside the folder I'm going to create a file for the context management. So that's generally how it's works. So let's create a context. Inside that I'm going to create a file called usecontext.js. So this is what exactly happened. So you're going to build a context where you're going to build all the logic for your application, interacting or making an API call or storing a data or building some sort of logic, and you're going to define all the function, all the variables right here in the context, and from this particular location you're going to export it into all your component. Okay, so just follow along with me. Let me show you that how you can configure your context so you can utilize that. So let me come here. I'll go with this. Okay, so this is the simple setup you have to do before you use this context in your application. So we have this React, then we have this context. So this is what you have to call export const NFT context. You can call it whatever you want, and here you have to call this create context. Okay, on React you have to call this create context, and it will create the context which you're going to use in the component in the page to get the data. So here we have done the basic export. So we have provided this provider. So this is the name you have to give. You can call it anything, but you have to make sure to call this provider. Here we have the children, and here we are simply returning it. So we are taking this NFT context, on that we are calling this provider, and here we have the value. So whatever data, whatever variable, whatever function we're going to pass it right up here, it will be available to our entire application. Okay, so just wait, I'll show you what I mean by that and how we're going to utilize it. So here we have this one. Now let's come here, let's take a variable. So I'll take a variable called, let's say NFT marketplace, and let's say NFT marketplace use context. So this is the variable, this is the data which I want to access in my home page, in my use context component. So all I have to do is I have to simply copy this one and pass here. So in that way, this data is available in global object. But before I use it, I have to simply configure my store. So make sure you have to do the exact approach. So here we are passing the value, and that's to look good. Now before I use this, I have to configure my store, and that's what I'm going to do is in my pages. So here I'm in .app.js, and here I have to configure the entire context. So that's very easy. All I have to do is to call the context. So I have to go into the context and use context, and here I have to get this one. I have to get the provider. So this is the provider we have built. Simply copy that one, and that's what we have to call it here. And we're going to simply wrap our entire application with this provider. So in that way, what will happen, whatever data we're going to export in the value, it's going to be available to us in our global object, and we can simply use it. So that's the setup you have to do. This is only the setup. Now simply come here, and if I'm going to simply call it, so if I want to use the data which I have defined in the context, I have to call that. To call the data, I have a function here. So I'll come here, I'll first import the context file. So that's coming from the /context/use context, and from here we have this NFT context. Okay, so simply take this one, because this will have all the data. Come back here and receive it, and first we have to simply import the use context from React. Then we can easily able to use our context, otherwise it will not work. So once we have that one, now we can come here and we'll say use context, and we have to simply pass the name of the context, NFT context, and that's the setup. That's the setup. All I have to do is come back here in the context, and I will simply get this variable which I have passed in the value, and I can simply call it here. So in this way, I can able to have the access of the data. Whether it's a function, data, you can easily able to have an access. So what I will do, I'll simply copy that one, and I'm going to simply pass that in the hook. I'm going to send as a prop. So I will say title, and I'm going to simply pass it. So if you really want to pass any data into a component, that's how you can do it. You can give whatever name you want, and that same name you're going to receive inside the component. So I call it title, and this is the data I want to receive. So that's the prop I have sent. Simply copy this one and come back here in the use context component and give this object and paste here. So this data is available. I can simply copy this one, and I can simply come here, remove this, and I'm going to simply call it, save it. If I come reload the browser, nothing is coming here. Okay, I have done something wrong. So what I will do, I'll come back here in the app.js, and I can see here is the problem. So we have to do instant return, and you can see we have this code. So remove this one, and we have to do instant return. And come here, code this and paste here and save it. If you save that, and here we have the data. If you come back here and let me come in this and reload the browse, and here you can see the NFT marketplace use context. You can simply come here and you can simply change the data. Here you can change that. You can pass any data and it will reflect here, and that's the best approach when you want to manage the entire state of your application. Just imagine that you are using a particular variable, a particular logic in your application in multiple places. So you don't need to do the changes in all the places one by one. All you have to do is to export the entire function, entire variable from one single context, and whatever changes you will do here in the context file, all the changes will take place in all the component, in all the pages. So that's the power of context, and this will make your entire context management so smooth. I want to tell you that if you really want to build a scalable application, a big application like e-commerce, NFT marketplace, in that context, it's not the optimal approach you have to go with, because it's going to have a lot of logic. You have to use some sort of extra tools which will help you to manage the entire stack. So in that context, we have Redux toolkit, which is so powerful and it's very easy to use in your entire application. It will give you multiple slice which you can define in your application to slice the data. Again, I have a complete course on this, a complete project on this, which you can check this one. In this, I have built this AI power movie application which you can simply follow, where I have teach you every single thing about the Redux toolkits. Okay, so that's how you can use the context. So that's the power of context which you can use. Hope you guys have understood that how you can utilize that one. So simply comment this. Now we're going to move to the next one, which is the like use Redux. So come here, call it use Redux. Our uReducer component is displaying, you can see looks pretty fine. Now what we have to do is we have to get back into the component. So here we have this use Redux, and here we have this two function called increment and decrement. This one is quite interesting. You can do in a normal approach the way we have done in the useState, but we have something powerful by called use Redux. So let's come here, let's come back into the component, and now we're going to use this use Redux. So first we have to import from React. So we'll say useReducer. So we have this useReducer, and now we have to define the initial state of our application. So this is, let's define it to initial state. You can define as a variable, but here I will go with the object. So we'll say count is going to be a 0. So that's the simple data type. That's the initial value I have. Now I'm going to create a function, because our reducer will take two things. It will take the initial stage, or it will take the function, callback function. So let's create a callback function. So we'll say function reducer, and in that we have to provide two things. We have to provide the state or the action. So let's say state, and we'll have an action. And inside that I'm going to take a, you can take a if statement, or you can take a like switch case, but here I will go with the switch case. And the best part of this is that you can call multiple function based on the state. So let's take a switch, and will take two things. It will take the action, because in action we have the type. That's what we have to send the data. So we'll say type. So here I have to define, simply remove this bracket and come back here. And here we have to build the logic. So if the case means the type is equal to increment, that means we have to call the increment function. So if the type, action type is increment, then we have to simply return this. We'll take this return, and we have to take the state. We'll take the count object count, and then we'll say state dot count, and we have to increment. So we'll say +1, because we have the state. That's why we can easily able to access the data, initial state. Okay, and that's what we have, and we'll simply add 1 if the action type is increment. Let's do the same thing for the decrement. So we'll say case if the type is decrement. Then I want to simply do the same thing, simply copy, and I have to do subtract. So minus, I want to simply subtract 1, and let's set the default value. So I'll say default, we'll say throw error. Okay, error, and call the error function. So that's the simple callback function we have. We have the initial state, account variable, and then we have a callback function. In that we are simply passing two things, state and action. And if on the base of the types, we have to simply make the call and increment or decrement our state count. Okay, so far so good. Now we can come here. Now what we will do is we'll take a variable call, and here we're going to call our use reducer, and inside that we have to pass the callback function and the initial state. So let's pass that reducer and the initial state we have created above, these two things, and then it will return us the two data. It will return the state, and it will return the dispatch. And this dispatch is really powerful, because this is exactly what we follow. This is what we follow exactly in our Redux toolkit. So this is the dispatch method we have. Looks good. Okay, and here we are simply passing that one. So we have this state, we have the dispatch, and we are simply passing that one. Now we can simply utilize that one. So here what we have to do is we have to simply call a function, create a function, in that we have to simply dispatch the data, means the type, the action type. So first we'll create this handle increment, because first we have to increment that one, So here I'll say that I'll use this dispatch, and in that I have to simply pass the type. So we'll say type is going to be increment. Okay, so increment. On the base of this, I can simply call the function. Okay, simply copy this one and paste here, and this will be decrement. Okay, this is the increment and decrement, and I have to change the name of the function. So let's come here. So let's change this name to decrement. Now we can simply copy and simply call the function here and do the same thing for the increment, and now it will work fine. So simply come here, reload the browser and click on this, and I'm getting this error message. Okay, I know what's the problem I had done. Come back here. It will not a type of object, it will be in the this particular bracket, and change this one, and now it will work fine. Save it, and let's come here. We have to simply display the data, because when the increment will go up or down, we have to display that. So we'll say, okay, we'll say state.count. If it's equal to 0, then we have to say useReducer. Otherwise we have to display the count. Okay, now it will work fine. Reload the page, click on this increment, it will increment, and click on decrement, it will decrement. And that's really powerful when you have to do a certain thing based on the useReducer. So you can build this use case, and you can take the state and the type, and you can simply define the data into the component. So that's how you can do it. Hope you guys have understood that what logic we have implemented here. Okay, we are taking the state and the action, and based on the types we are simply calling the function. You can make an API call, or you can display any type of data based on this logic. So this is the most common hook you will find when you will build a complex logic or make a multiple requests in our statement. So that's what you can do it. Okay, so you can simply increment, decrement, no issue we have. So that's how we can use this useReducer hook. So come back here. Now we're going to simply work on our last hook, and this one is called useRef. And the best part of this useRef is that you can see it's not defined, because I have already declared the variable. So here you can see I have the variable. So the best part of this useRef is that if you want to perform certain action based on the window object. So for example, that if user is scrolling, and on the base of that scroll you want to make certain calls like API calls, or open up the pop-up, or you have to display the sliders or sliding. So those kind of things you have to do. And in that context, this useRef is really powerful, because it will give you the entire object of a window, and then you can perform the logic. So let me show you how you can do that. So in this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an event. So whenever the user will scroll, we'll create a scroll bar, not a scroll bar, create a progress bar. Okay, when the user will scroll. So here we are in the component. So first we have to receive the component, hook useRef. Now once we have the useRef, we have to simply create a variable. So you can see we'll take this useEffect as well, because inside that we're going to call it, and let's declare a variable. So we have this indicator ref, and here we'll set this useRef to null by default. If I save it, if I come back to the browser, so this is the setup I have done. So we have this blue one, and this is what we're going to simply move based on the user scroll bar, whether the user is going up or down. On the base of that, we have to simply remove that. Okay, on the base of nothing is happening right now, because we have to build the logic, and we have to find the window object and where the user is currently on the window. That's what we have to simply find out. So come back here. Right now nothing is happening. Let's build a logic to change this. So we have this two state, useRef and useEffect, and we have our variable. Now we can come here. Let's take this useEffect, and it's going to take this a function. So inside that we have to create a function called handle scrolled. Okay, and it's going to take the function. Inside that we have to build the entire logic. So what first we have to get couple of data. We have to get the top value. So let's create a variable called scroll top, and we have this entire window. So, and this window object will be only available, and this window objects, it's only available in the useEffect. If you call it window straight away, it's not going to work, because it's only available in useEffect. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind. So what I will do, if I try to console log out this entire window object, so I can do that. Let me do the console log and let me show you. So I'll say scroll top, and if I save it, come back here, reload the browser, and if I simply do the inspect element, right now it's nothing happening, because I have to call this particular function So let's create a event listener. We'll say window dot add event listener, and in that we have to simply call the function. We'll say scroll. So whenever we scroll, we have to call this handle scroll function. So we'll say scroll, and let's call the function handle scroll. Now it will render. So if I reload, you can see we are getting this entire window object, and in that we have the entire information we have to simply access based on the logic. We have all of this object. So if you scroll, you will have this one. Now what I will do is, let me get the scroll top data. So I'll say dot screen y, and this will give us the top value. Now we have to create another variable, and in that we'll say screen height. So we'll have this called document dot body dot scroll height. Now I have to get the client height. So what I will do, I'll simply come back here and I have to simply change this to client height, and this time we have to call this on the, let's say, document element client height. So these are the three information we have. Once we have, let me show you the console log. So this time we're going to take this client height and console log out. So you can see we are getting that client height. So what is the height of the window? You can see it's 551. Same thing we can do with the scroll height. So this is the height, scroll height, and now if you see the top, it's going to be definitely 0. Save it, and we have the 0. So we can listen the event and we can see the data. Now we can simply remove that one, and now what I want to do is I want to simply show that progress bar based on the user scroll up or down. So let's come here. So right now you can see nothing is happening. Now we have to attach that functionality. So we're going to take a variable called scroll percentage, and here we're going to take this. So first we have to take this scroll top, and we have to divide by, we'll take this scroll height and we have to subtract with the client height, and we have to multiply with the 100 because we have to take into the percentage. So that's what we have here. Once we have got it, now that data we have to set into our indicator ref, which we have defined. So we'll say current dot style and dot width, and we can set the value. So we'll say dot width, change this to dth width, and we have to define our scroll percentage. We're going to take this template literal and we're going to simply perform this action. So save it, and that's how we are setting up. If I come here, reload the page, okay, nothing is happening. I know what's the problem we have. So I can see the issue. So this looks pretty good. No issues I have so far. So where is the problem? So let's come here. We have to call this, okay, this is my bad. So we have to call this empty array because we have to call this behavior on the page reload. So it looks good. Now we can come here and we have to simply remove this event. So let's call this remove return, and we're going to take this callback function and we'll say event dot remove scroll, and we have to remove this particular event function once it's get completed. Looks pretty good. Now we have to save it and reload the page, and still we are having the issue. I know what is the problem. So we have taken this variable and we have this function, we have this, and now this, and we have the percentage, and this was the problem we had. So I forgot to add this percentage value, and because of that it was not rolling. So make sure to add this percentage, and the rest should be fine. Save it, and here we are simply passing into the div element. Save it, and here you can see on the base of the scroll behavior we can easily able to increase or decrease our event. So that looks pretty good. Hope you guys have understood that how we have interacted with the DOM element and performed certain action like a progress bar using this useRef. So this one is really powerful. You can see first we have taken that and then we have simply call it. So it looks pretty good. The most common use hook you will, and these are the most common hook you will find when you will work on your project and you will use over and over again. So we are done with the use context, we are done with the use effect, we have done with the use reducer, and we have this use ref, and we have the use effect. So hope you guys have understood these 5 the most common use hooks which you will use over and over again. Okay, so if I come back here in the GitHub, this is the starter file which is given to all of you guys. Simply download it and do the experiment. Okay, we're going to add more on this particular course. So right now we have covered 5 and we're going to add more in the future. Okay. Okay, but these are the most common one which you will use over and over again when you will build your tab. So again, I would suggest you come and have a look on all the project we have built on the channel and try to understand the logic we have built and how we are interacting and using this entire hooks in our project, because these are the 5 hooks which you have to know if you really want to work with the React, Next.js or TypeScript. These are the must known hooks for you to build your tab, to build your web 2 application. With that, I'm ending this video, and again, if you want, you guys can simply check the course in that I have explained you every single thing about the Redux toolkit for managing the state, or we have built a lot of projects. So simply go through that and pick any project and start building. With that, I'm ending this video. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.